My sister Chloe explained it to me with a patient smile, the kind you'd give a child who doesn't understand how the world works. She told me I didn't own a single share, a single brick, or a single asset of the company I had funded. The paperwork I signed, the document that drained my entire inheritance, wasn't a partnership agreement. It was, in her words, a generous family loan with no expectation of immediate repayment. My life savings, the future my grandparents had secured for me, was now legally hers to command, and I had been cut out of my own life's dream before it even had a chance to begin. My parents just stood behind her, nodding in agreement, their faces a mixture of pity and resolve. It all began 6 months after our grandmother passed away, leaving me a substantial sum of money. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to change my life entirely. Enough for a down payment on a house, enough to go back to school without debt, enough to provide a cushion of security I had never known. My grandmother always said she was rewarding my quiet diligence, a trait my family often mistook for a lack of ambition. Chloe, on the other hand, received a much smaller token amount. My grandmother believed Chloe had enough ambition for the both of us, and she needed to learn the value of earning her own way in the world. Chloe was always the star of the family. She was vibrant, charismatic, and full of grand ideas that seemed to sparkle the moment she spoke them. My parents adored her, seeing her as the embodiment of their own unfulfilled dreams. They poured their resources, their time, and their emotional energy into her every whim, while I was the responsible one, the steady background character who never caused any trouble. I didn't mind my role. I was proud of my sister's fire, even if I sometimes felt invisible, standing in her shadow. The inheritance felt like the first time I was truly seen for who I was. Her latest grand idea was a boutique wellness brand, Elysian Fields, focusing on bespoke organic products. It sounded wonderful, as all her ideas did. She drafted a business plan that was more of a glossy magazine feature than a financial document, filled with mood boards and aspirational quotes. She pitched it to banks and small investors, but no one would bite. They all said the same thing. Her projections were unrealistic, her market research was thin, and she had no personal capital to invest. Each rejection only fueled her narrative that the world simply wasn't ready for her genius, a sentiment my parents echoed with vigor. That's when her attention and the full weight of my family's focus turned to me and my inheritance. It started subtly, with Chloe mentioning her business frustrations over dinner. She'd sigh dramatically, talking about how close she was to a breakthrough if only she had a little seed money. My parents would look at me, their expressions a carefully crafted blend of hope and expectation. I knew what was coming, and a knot of anxiety began to form in my stomach. That money was my escape route, my chance to build a life on my own terms, and I could feel their hands already reaching for it. The official pitch came during what my mother called a family strategy meeting. Chloe had set up a presentation in the living room, complete with slides and product samples. She wasn't asking for a handout, she explained. She was offering me an opportunity. She wanted me to be her partner. We would build Elysian Fields together, 50-50. My capital, her vision. She painted a picture of us as a dynamic duo, taking the wellness world by storm. Her words were intoxicating, and for a moment I allowed myself to believe in the fantasy she was weaving around us. My father was the first to speak after her presentation. He said it was a brilliant plan, a chance to keep the money in the family and build a real legacy. My mother added that it was what my grandmother would have wanted, for us to support each other. They framed my hesitation not as prudence, but as a lack of faith in my own sister. The pressure was immense, a thick, suffocating blanket of familial obligation. They weren't just asking for my money, they were asking for my loyalty and implying that withholding one meant withholding the other. I tried to voice my concerns. I pointed out the flaws in her business plan, the same ones the banks had identified. I asked about a phased investment, starting small to test the market. But my logical arguments were swept away by a tide of emotional manipulation. Chloe's eyes filled with tears as she accused me of not believing in her. My parents called me overly cautious and negative, reminding me that great success required taking great risks. They made me feel like I was the villain for wanting to protect the one piece of security I had ever been given. For the next 2 weeks, it was the only thing they talked about. Every phone call, every visit, circled back to Elysian Fields and my role as the key to its success. Chloe would send me links to expensive commercial real estate, asking for my opinion as her partner. My parents would talk about how proud they were of us for working together, a future they had already decided on. They were building a reality around me that I hadn't agreed to, and the more I resisted, the more isolated and selfish they made me feel. My quiet diligence was now being framed as a character flaw. The turning point came when Chloe presented me with a thick folder of documents. "The partnership agreement," she announced, her smile wide and triumphant. She said her lawyer had drafted it to protect both of us equally. I looked at the dense pages of legal jargon, feeling completely out of my depth. I told her I wanted my own lawyer to review it, a suggestion that was met with wounded offense. "You don't trust me?" she asked, her voice cracking. "After all this, you think I would cheat my own sibling?" My parents immediately jumped to her defense, saying I was being difficult and insulting. Looking back, that was the moment I should have walked away. But I was so tired of the constant pressure, of being made to feel like the ungrateful and untrusting one. I was exhausted from fighting a battle on 3 fronts. A small part of me, the part that had always craved their approval, wanted to believe in the dream they were selling. I wanted to be the supportive sibling, the successful business partner, the one who finally made them proud. So, against my better judgment, I relented. I told them I would read it myself and we could sign it at the end of the week. The agreement was complex, but it had all the right words: partnership, equity, profit sharing. I now know that those words were cleverly embedded within clauses that rendered them meaningless, but at the time, I saw what I wanted to see. I saw the promise of a shared future, a project that would finally bring me closer to my family. I convinced myself that my fears were unfounded, that I was just being paranoid. They were my family after all. They wouldn't intentionally hurt me. That was the foundational belief I clung to, the one they would ultimately shatter. The day we signed the papers felt like a celebration. We went to the bank together, and my mother held my hand as I authorized the wire transfer. Seeing the balance in my account drop to almost zero was terrifying. But Chloe's ecstatic hug and my parents' beaming smiles were a powerful anesthetic. They toasted to the new partners that evening. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I truly belonged. I had given them what they wanted, and in return, I was showered with the affection and approval I had always craved. It was the intoxicating but dangerously fragile peace. The first month of our partnership was exactly as I had dreamed. Chloe and I were a team. We scouted locations, interviewed designers, and spent hours debating the scent profiles of essential oils. She valued my input, and I felt a sense of purpose I had never experienced before. I was more than just the quiet, responsible sibling. I was a co-founder, an entrepreneur. I poured all my energy into the project, believing that every hour I worked was an investment in our shared future and a validation of my decision to trust them. The shift began slowly, so subtly I almost didn't notice it. Chloe started making small decisions without me. She'd sign a contract with a supplier or approve a packaging design, and when I asked why I wasn't included, she'd wave it off with a casual, "Oh, it was just a minor thing. I didn't want to bother you." At first I accepted her excuses. She was the creative visionary after all, but the minor things started to become bigger things. She leased a retail space in the most expensive part of town without even showing it to me first. When I confronted her about the lease, she told me she had to move fast on the deal, and I wasn't available. It was a lie. I had been home all day waiting for her call. When I expressed my frustration, she accused me of trying to micromanage her. Our parents, of course, took her side. "Chloe has the instinct for this, dear. my mother said soothingly. You need to let her take the lead. That was always the arrangement. I was confused. I thought the arrangement was a 50-50 partnership, but now the narrative was changing. Soon, I found myself relegated to menial tasks. I was asked to organize inventory, manage spreadsheets of office supplies, and run errands. When I tried to participate in strategic meetings, Chloe would patiently explain that my skills were better suited to the operational side of the business. She was effectively demoting me within the company I had entirely funded. I was being pushed to the margins, my role shrinking daily while hers expanded. The dream of partnership was dissolving into the grim reality of being an overqualified and unpaid assistant. I tried to talk to my parents about it, hoping they would mediate. But their support for Chloe was absolute. They told me I was being too sensitive and that I needed to be a better team player. My father took me aside and explained that in any successful business, one person had to be the leader. He said I should be proud of the support I was providing for Chloe's vision. They didn't see it as my company at all. It was Chloe's, and I was just a helper, a financial stepping stone she had used to get started. My attempts to access the company's financial records were met with constant resistance. Chloe told me the accounting software was complicated and that I wouldn't understand the reports. She promised to give me a full breakdown at the end of the quarter, but the date kept getting pushed back. Every request for transparency was treated as an act of suspicion, a personal attack on her integrity. The more I pushed for the rights of a partner, the more I was treated like an adversary. The family dinners became tense and silent. The breaking point came when I saw an article in a local business journal celebrating the launch of Elysian Fields. It was a fawning profile of Chloe, hailing her as a bold new entrepreneur. The article detailed the company's funding, describing it as being privately financed by the founder. There was no mention of a partner, no mention of my investment, no mention of my existence at all. The erasure was so complete, so blatant, that I felt the air leave my lungs. It was a public declaration of a truth I had been too afraid to confront. I took a copy of the article and the partnership agreement to Chloe's new, beautifully furnished office, a space I was no longer welcome in. I demanded an explanation. I told her I was a 50% owner and I would not be erased from my own company. That's when she sat me down and delivered the speech that shattered my world. The patient smile, the condescending tone, the carefully chosen words designed to dismantle me piece by piece. All while my parents stood by her side as silent reinforcement. She explained that I had fundamentally misunderstood the arrangement. She pointed to a cleverly worded clause on page 17 of the agreement, a clause my untrained eyes had glossed over. It stated that my contribution was to be considered a non-recourse long-term capital loan to her, the sole proprietor. Any equity or partnership status was contingent upon a separate agreement, one that was never created because she, as the founder, had decided against it. The partnership language was purely provisional, a legal ghost she had used to lure me in. I was stunned into silence. I couldn't form words. My mind was reeling, trying to process the scale of the deception. A loan? I had never agreed to a loan. We had talked about partnership, about building something together. My parents watched me, their faces unreadable. It was my father who finally spoke. We thought it was for the best, he said softly. You're not a risk taker, not like your sister. This way, if the business failed, you wouldn't be liable. We were protecting you. Protecting me. They had stripped me of my entire inheritance, my only source of security, and handed it to my sister with no strings attached, and they called it protection. It was the most twisted, cruelest form of gaslighting I had ever experienced. They hadn't protected me. They had sacrificed me. They had decided that my future was less important than Chloe's dream. They had made a calculated choice, and I was the designated loser in their family game. My financial security was just collateral damage in the service of their favored child. Chloe went on to explain the loan terms. Repayment wasn't due for 15 years, and it was interest-free. Even then, repayment was contingent on the business reaching a certain profit threshold, a threshold so high it was practically unreachable. The contract was an ironclad trap. I had willingly signed away my future, believing I was investing in it. I had no legal recourse without hiring a lawyer. I could no longer afford to fight a battle against my own family that I would almost certainly lose. The weeks that followed were a blur of grief and disbelief. I was barred from the company premises. My calls to Chloe went unanswered. When I tried to talk to my parents, they treated me with a weary impatience, as if I were a problem they wished would just go away. They told me I needed to move on and be happy for my sister's success. They couldn't understand, or refused to understand, that her success was built entirely on my ruin. It was a foundation of lies and theft. I had to move out of my apartment because I could no longer afford the rent. The inheritance was supposed to be my safety net, and without it, I was in freefall. I took a second job, working late nights just to make ends meet. I watched from afar as Elysian Fields thrived. Chloe was celebrated in the community. She did interviews, hosted charity events, and built a personal brand as a savvy, self-made businesswoman. Every article, every social media post was another dagger in my heart. The most painful part is the silence. My family acts as if nothing happened. At holiday gatherings, they talk about the business, about Chloe's brilliant new product line, about her upcoming expansion. They talk about it right in front of me, either oblivious to my pain or, more likely, completely indifferent to it. I'm expected to sit there and smile, to applaud the success of the person who stole my future, while the people who were supposed to protect me enabled the theft. I lost more than just money. I lost my sense of self, my trust in others, and my belief in the fundamental goodness of my own family. They didn't just take my inheritance. They took my past and my future. They rewrote our shared history into a narrative where I was a mere footnote, a stepping stone on my sister's path to greatness. The financial loss is devastating, but the emotional betrayal is a wound that I suspect will never truly heal. It's a constant aching void where a family used to be. Now I'm just trying to survive. I work, I pay my bills, and I try not to think about what could have been. I see my family's posts on social media, pictures of them on lavish vacations funded by my money, celebrating a success that feels like my personal failure. They are living a beautiful life built on an ugly secret, and the injustice of it is a weight I carry every single day. The world sees a happy, successful family, but I know the truth. I know the rotten foundation it's all built upon. I'm posting this here because I don't know where else to turn. I can't talk to my friends about it. It's too shameful, too complicated. How do you explain that your own parents and sister orchestrated your financial ruin and then pretended it was an act of love? How do you move forward when the people who were supposed to be your greatest allies are your worst enemies? The money is gone. I've accepted that. But how do you ever recover from a betrayal so deep it redefines your entire life? My entire relationship with my family was transactional, and I was the only one who didn't know the terms. I was valued not for who I was, but for what I had. The moment my resources were transferred, my value disappeared. This realization is colder and harder than any financial hardship. It's a profound loneliness that settles deep in your bones. They didn't just steal my inheritance. They revealed that my place in the family was conditional, a service I could no longer provide. This knowledge is its own kind of bankruptcy. Chloe never needed a partner. She needed a silent investor with no rights. She needed a bank that wouldn't ask questions, and my parents ensured I would play that role. They coached her, supported her, and ran interference for her when I got too close to the truth. It was a coordinated, deliberate effort. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a business deal gone wrong. It was a calculated act of financial abuse, orchestrated by the three people in the world I should have been able to trust, without question. That premeditation is what haunts me in the quiet hours of the night. The cruelest irony is that I know deep down they believe they did the right thing. In their minds, they balanced the family equation. They took from the child who was too cautious and gave to the one who was a go-getter. They see it as a justifiable redistribution of assets for the greater family good, where good is defined as whatever makes Chloe happy and successful. My own happiness and security were never even a variable in their calculation. I was just a resource to be managed and deployed for the benefit of the golden child. I sometimes wonder what my grandmother would think if she could see what they did with her gift. She left that money to me because she saw my stability as a strength, not a weakness. She wanted to give me the freedom that Chloe was given by default. My parents and sister took that legacy, her final act of love for me, and twisted it into a tool of my own oppression. They used her gift to chain me down, to fund my sister's freedom at the expense of my own. It feels like a betrayal of her memory as much as it is a betrayal of me. My life is now divided into two parts, before the investment and after. Before, I had dreams, plans, and a tangible sense of hope for the future. I had a path forward that was my own. After, my life is about damage control. It's about rebuilding from a financial ground zero, haunted by the ghost of the life I was supposed to have. The opportunities I lost, the security that was stolen, they are phantom limbs that ache with a pain no one else can see. It's a daily struggle to not be consumed by bitterness. The business, Elysian Fields, is a constant mocking presence in my life. I see its products in stores, its ads online. Each time, it's a visceral reminder of the lie. People praise its aesthetic, its empowering message. They don't know that its success is built on the disempowerment of another woman, the founder's own sister. Chloe has masterfully crafted a public image of an ethical, inspiring entrepreneur, a narrative so compelling that it almost makes me doubt my own reality. But I know the truth behind the brand. I know the cost of every beautifully packaged product. I've thought about exposing them, about telling the world what they did, but I always stop myself. What would it accomplish? A messy public feud would only be framed as bitter jealousy. They would paint me as the unstable sibling trying to ruin my successful sister's life. They have the money, the resources, and the polished narrative to win any public battle. I would be left with nothing but more pain and the label of a liar. So I remain silent, carrying the truth like a stone in my gut. The real tragedy is that I still miss them. Not the people they are now, but the people I thought they were. I miss the idea of a mother who would protect me, a father who would guide me, and a sister who would be my friend. I grieve for that imagined family as much as I grieve for my lost future. The deception took everything from me, including the comfort of my own memories. Now, when I look back at old family photos, I can't see the love. I can only see the long, calculated setup for the ultimate betrayal. People talk about cutting off toxic family, but it's not that simple. They are woven into the fabric of my identity, and cutting them out feels like tearing a part of myself away. So I exist in a state of limbo, estranged, but still connected by a history I can't escape. I keep them at a distance, a self-preservation tactic that feels like a life sentence of loneliness. I am an island, and the shipwreck that stranded me here was caused by my own family's hands. They sail on in their beautiful ship, never looking back. My parents still send me birthday cards with a $20 bill tucked inside, a gesture so painfully clueless, it feels like a deliberate insult. They see no connection between their daughter struggling to pay her rent and the vast sum of money they helped their other daughter steal. In their minds, the two things are entirely separate. Their financial and emotional blindness is perhaps the most unforgivable part of this whole ordeal. They simply cannot or will not see the devastation they have caused. I often wonder if Chloe feels any guilt. Does she ever, in a quiet moment, feel a pang of remorse for what she did? Or has she so fully embraced her own narrative that she truly believes she did nothing wrong? I suspect it's the latter. She has the remarkable ability to bend reality to fit her own desires. In her story, she is the hero, the visionary who took a risk and won. I'm just a forgotten chapter, a necessary sacrifice for her success. The lack of accountability is staggering. The stolen inheritance has become a ghost that haunts my every financial decision. I hoard what little money I have, terrified of losing it. I distrust any offer of help, any promise of a good deal. The experience has fundamentally broken my ability to trust, not just in family, but in the world at large. They taught me that love can be a weapon, that promises can be traps, and that security is an illusion. These are terrible lessons to learn, and the tuition cost me everything I had. The path forward is unclear. Rebuilding my finances will take decades. Rebuilding my trust in people might take a lifetime. Some days, the anger and the sense of injustice are all-consuming. Other days, it's just a dull, persistent ache, the new normal of my life. I am learning to live with the scars, but I fear they will always define me. They are a constant reminder of the day my family decided I was worth sacrificing. This is the heavy price of their favoritism. My only solace is the anonymity of this forum, the ability to finally speak my truth without judgment, to lay out the cold, hard facts of the financial and emotional wreckage they left behind. Putting these words out into the world feels like a small act of defiance, a way of reclaiming a piece of the story they tried so hard to erase. It doesn't change what happened, but it's a confirmation that it was real. The pain is real, the loss is real, and the betrayal was real. What they did was more than just a financial transaction. It was an act of profound psychological violence. They systematically dismantled my reality, my relationships, and my sense of security, all for the sake of one person's ambition. They gambled with my life, and when they won, they left me with all the losses. The true debt isn't the money I'm owed. It's the life I'm now forced to live, a life shadowed by their greed and their complete lack of love. It's a debt I'll be paying for a very long time. Sometimes I fantasize about confronting them at a big family event, laying out the entire sordid story for all their friends to hear. I imagine their shock, their denial, their frantic attempts to control the narrative, but it's just a fantasy. In reality, I know it would solve nothing. They would close ranks, protect each other, and paint me as hysterical and unhinged. They are a fortress, and their loyalty is to each other, not to the truth. I learned long ago that you can't win a war against people who are incapable of shame. The hardest days are the ones where I feel a flicker of hope for my own future, only to have it extinguished by the reality of my situation. Every time I think about starting my own small venture, or even just taking a vacation, the financial void they created pulls me back down. I am tethered to their betrayal. My sister got to launch her dream, while I am left trying to repair the foundation of my own life, a foundation they deliberately shattered. Her freedom was purchased at the price of my own. I've learned to be self-reliant in a way I never wanted. I know that I can only count on myself. It's a harsh lesson, but a powerful one. The hyper-independence I've developed is a trauma response, a shield I've built to ensure no one can ever hurt me this way again. It keeps me safe, but it also keeps me isolated. This is the paradox of my new life. The strategies I use to survive are the very things that prevent me from truly living. The damage they caused is multi-layered and insidious. The lack of justice is what eats at me the most. In a fair world, there would be consequences for what they did, but they will likely never face any. They will continue to live their successful, happy lives, completely insulated from the damage they've caused. They took everything, and they got away with it. Knowing this is a bitter pill to swallow every morning. It's a reminder that sometimes the bad guys win, especially when they are disguised as your loving family. My advice to anyone reading this is to never, ever mix family and large sums of money without your own independent legal counsel. Never sign anything under emotional pressure. Never believe that blood is a substitute for a legally binding fair contract. Your family might love you, but their definition of love might be very different from your own, especially when there is money on the line. I learned this lesson in the most brutal way possible, and I hope my story can serve as a warning to someone else. The name of her company, Elysian Fields, is a cruel joke. In mythology, it's a paradise for heroes. My inheritance was my little piece of paradise, my reward for a life of quiet, hard work. She took its name and its substance, creating a false paradise for herself. She is no hero. She is a thief, propped up by parents who were her willing accomplices. The beautiful brand is a lie, and behind its serene marketing is a story of profound greed and familial cruelty. Before this, I always thought of my sister as my rival, but a friendly one. Now I see her for what she truly is, my predator. She saw my inheritance not as my security, but as her opportunity. She stalked it, planned her attack, and executed it with precision, using our parents as her cover. The familial dynamic I thought was about love and support was actually a predatory ecosystem, and I just happened to be the designated prey. This realization has changed my perception of everything I thought I knew about us. I am slowly, painfully, trying to build a new definition of family, one based not on blood, but on mutual respect, trust, and genuine care. I'm seeking out friendships that are supportive and relationships that are transparent. It is a slow process, learning to trust again, learning that not everyone is looking for an angle or an advantage. I am trying to build my own small paradise, a real Elysian Fields, far away from the ruins of the family I left behind. It is the only way I can imagine a future for myself. The ultimate betrayal was not that they took the money, but that they felt entitled to it. Their actions were born from a deep-seated belief that my resources were, in fact, family resources, to be allocated by them as they saw fit. My autonomy, my dreams, and my future were secondary to their collective desires. I was not an individual to them. I was an asset on a family balance sheet. They saw my inheritance as a surplus in my column that could be used to cover a deficit in Chloe's. It was a cold, brutal, and entirely financial calculation. I wonder if my parents even remember the person I was before all this. The person who trusted them implicitly, who would have done anything for them. Or has their guilt, if they feel any, forced them to rewrite me into a character who deserved what happened? It's easier for them to see me as difficult, selfish, and ungrateful. It justifies their actions and allows them to sleep at night. Vilifying the victim is the oldest trick in the abuser's handbook, and my parents are textbook examples. The person I was is now just another thing they've taken from me. So here I am, sharing my story with strangers on the internet. It feels like a final, desperate act of seeking witness. All I want is for someone to hear me, to acknowledge the injustice, and to validate the pain that my own family dismisses. I am not looking for pity, but for understanding. For the simple human connection of someone saying, what they did to you was wrong. Because in the crushing silence of my own life, I'm starting to doubt everything, even the legitimacy of my own feelings. The money is gone. The family is a toxic mirage. The future is an unwritten page I'm too exhausted to fill. But tonight, by writing this all down, I feel a tiny flicker of something that isn't despair. It is the feeling of my own voice, a voice they tried to silence. It's not much, but right now, it feels like everything. It is the one asset they could not steal from me, the one piece of myself that I still fully own, and I will hold on to it as if my life depends on it, because in a way, it does.